Let me ask you background. So before Fox and View, what were you doing?
I was teaching.
Really?
I was a teacher. I taught Spanish actually in schools for 6 or 7 years. It's hard to remember exactly, but in New York City, in Staten Island, and in Manhattan. I was an academic dean, high school dean, and interestingly went through 6 flu seasons and never a mask was mentioned, even though the flu is more dangerous to kids than COVID, but that's a side note. But yeah, I taught in these schools, so when we talk about like woke curriculums and all of that, oh yeah, that's real, that's happening.
Who were you in high school? If we were in high school together, 10th grade, who's Jedidiah?
A nerd.
Okay, like 4 point something GPA, valedictorian type of deal?
I was the valedictorian of my college.
Were you really?
Yeah. I went to Wagner College on Staten Island. I got a 4.0. I just worked. I was a bookworm, so I read a lot. I was social too. I had a lot of friends. I don't know if the definition of a nerd, like what you're thinking of, I wasn't, Ronald Miller in Can't Buy Me Love. Do you guys know that movie? It's amazing, by the way. I had a crush on him for the longest time. I love nerds.
You're dating yourself here,
I love nerds though, like actual nerds, like Peter Parker.
When did you break out of your shell? Because clearly you're not a nerd. Clearly you're vocal. Clearly you got a lot going on.
So college, I kind of discovered, that I had a little bit more of a voice. I, started dating. I started living. Still was very academic, though. I at the time, I thought I was going to get a PhD in Spanish literature. I was like, I want to be a professor. I love college campuses. This is where I'm going to go. Went to Columbia, got my master's, and was like, I was wrong.
Columbia?
I don't know. Yeah.
So at that time, were you a liberal? What were you politically?
I was a conservative.
So your parents, are they conservatives?
So, yes, my dad is very conservative. He's like a Ted Cruz kind of guy.
I'm sorry.
My mom is a little bit more of a mixed bag. I think I think she's more of like a Marco Rubio voter if I had to peg her as one. But yeah, my family was very eclectic though. My grandparents were Democrats. A lot of family friends that we had in our house, as family, aunts that weren't really aunts but were close friends with my mom and whatnot. Most of them were liberal. And I grew up in New York City. Yeah. So I was surrounded by liberalism. It just didn't make sense to me. So yeah, I went to Columbia for a master's in Spanish literature and decided it wasn't for me, that I loved literature, but I went and worked for an insurance company for a while.
Insurance company?
Yeah, I do nothing about insurance.
Really?
I'm a terrible, really.
Who were you with?
Pat's ears just perked up.
Zurich.
Zurich.
I was with Zurich, but I did marketing for them.
I got you. But I used to sell Zurich, so I remember Zurich.
Yeah, I'm not good at that stuff. Like if you're going to ask me about inflation, have another guest on.
You're not good. I feel like you could be good at anything you do. So what weren't you good at?
I'm not. I just don't have that kind of head. I'm more of a creative. I'm a creative type. I want to sit and write short stories all day long. And essentially, what happened was I worked I waited tables. Which was one of the most fun jobs I ever had in my life, and I made a lot of cash. So but tough on your feet, I grew some good guns though that I've kept from the,
obvious. Yeah,
you can't really see them in here,
but
I
see it through there it is.
I'm just, you're gonna have to take my word for it. But floated around for a little while, went to LA, thought I might want to do some acting, chickened out, was a big chicken about that. Shouldn't have been, wish I had stayed, came back.
Really? Yeah. Wish you would have stayed?
Wish I would have stayed.
Why? Because it's typically the other way around. Wish you would have stayed.
No, acting was something I loved. I grew up in a house where my mom taught acting classes to kids. And out of my living room when I was really little, she taught improvisation, and I loved it. I genuinely loved it. I write about this in my book, Dear Hartley, a little bit, trying to encourage my kid to, like, if you love something, go for it. Don't be a coward like me. But it was hard, and I was in LA, I was with a friend, and I just didn't have the right head, and I didn't give it my best shot. And I think if I would have stayed, I would have had at least a chance. Either I would have had a chance at success, or I would have been able to say I gave it my all, which is always what you want out of life. And you want your kids to know that too.
So Pat asked you who you were in high school, 10th grade.
Yeah.
So, you brought up so were you a Melrose Place girl, 90210?
90210.
Okay, yeah. I saw something with Luke Perry rolled up on you. Rest in peace.
I loved him so much.
Yeah.
Yes, 90210, 100% all the way. I was a Brenda Dillon fan. Loved him. Got to meet him at The View years later. Oh my gosh, he was like...
Your husband was in the crowd. He was looking a little furious.
My husband was...
He was a little jealous.
So I wasn't married at the time.
Yeah,
I was
and you were having
him,
second thoughts
and
at
my
that point.
mom said to me that my now husband looked at her and said, should I go up there? And she was like, Jeremy, it's live television. Like, what are you going to do up there?
Was he going to knock out Dylan McKay?
Because I was like... I was very back in high school.
You were Google Gaga, yeah. That's obvious.
But I was 10th grade. I was also ran track. I was social, but I'm not social now. This is the most social I get. What's happening right now?
But Jedidiah, were you feisty? Like, were you part of the debate team? Were you part of like all of that, or not really?
I was when I was really small,
Yeah.
I never spoke. In fact, my first grade teacher called my mom and was like, is she okay? And she's really smart, but she doesn't speak. I was very shy and very afraid of all of that. By the time I got to high school, I had a politics teacher, who I later found out was like a super liberal, but really encouraged us to speak out. And I kind of got my voice in that class. And in college, kind of shifted away, did more of a literary journey. But I think that was where I kind of got my fire. And, years later, after I did the acting, came back to New York, taught for a little while. The whole political career started because I was writing on a blog that had like 5 viewers. I'm not kidding. At one point, it was like 5 people had seen my article. And one of the articles was reviewing Mark Levin's book. And my friend sent it to him, and he read it on air. And a couple of months later, like Sean Hannity's people called me and were like, does she want to come on the panel? And my mom fainted because my mom loves him to this day. Hannity. And there I was, this school teacher who didn't have a journalism degree, who was a regular girl just speaking my mind, sitting on a panel, and 2 weeks later filling in for Dana Perino in a segment with Stuart Varney. And I was like, I'm not really sure how. I think there was just a hunger for a regular voice at that time.
Well, Ron Paul said the best thing. Ron Paul said when he was doing what he was doing full time as a doctor, he started going and hearing a economist speak. Mm-hmm. He says, when I left, every time he recommended a book, I'd go back and read the book. I'd go back and read it. And I got obsessed. He says, so I kept going back every time he was giving a speech. He said, eventually I went up to the guy and said, listen, I can't help myself. I'm addicted to this content. This just makes a lot of sense. Liberty, freedom, all this stuff. He said, this was never things I thought about. He says, what do I do with this passion? He says, don't worry about it. He says, keep talking about it, keep writing about it. The right people will find you. Yep. People found you. So was Fox found you first because the Mark Levin, and then The View came in? How did View approach you?
So Fox found me first, and I wound up doing a lot of free television, which is what happens in TV. Everyone sees that you're on TV, and they're like, oh, you're a celebrity. You're broke. I was broke. I had been on a teacher's salary before that. I don't come from money. I grew up in a very middle-class family. My parents struggled to pay the mortgage. I didn't have that. I didn't have any connections to the political world. Like, my parents weren't in politics. So I did a lot of free TV, and then I got my first contributor deal over at Fox after maybe a couple of years of doing free television. I did not only free TV at Fox, I was doing, CNBC, I was doing with Larry Kudlow at the time, I was doing MSNBC hits.
Kudlow, I mean, that's serious financial conversations right there.
No, I mean, yes, but not mine. Mine were more like culture. We'd do a panel but I would find myself in these places and be like, wow, I'm building a career, but broke. Nobody knows this. Maybe I should have told everyone, hey, make a donation.
Fake it till you make it, girl. Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I got my first contributor deal. First contributor deal was small. I mean, it's not money that you're making, but from there I signed 2 deals with Fox that were for a contributor, and then The View came. And it's funny, I went to Roger Ailes at the time and I said, The View wants me to come on and guest host. And typically Fox doesn't let you do any of that stuff. But he was like, well, I think it'll be really good for the network, extra exposure, and you're not going to get the job. And
no way.
Yeah, because I was so new. I was so green. And I was like, okay. I knew I had a shot at the job.
But did you take that as a challenge, or was it just kind of like, are you like, I'm gonna crush this one show when I get on? They're gonna know I belong here.
Well, once he gave me in writing the approval, I was like, wait till he sees what I do over there.
Did he become Pat talks about find your enemy to get motivated, right? Did that become your enemy, proving Roger Ailes, the legendary, great, controversial Roger, is that your enemy?
Well, I think it was, he had launched this huge television network. And, for a while I had been a contributor, but I wanted to fill in on shows. Like, I wanted to host. And he was always like, you have to earn your place to do that. And then here comes this network TV show that's like, we'll give her a chance. And he was like, oh, you don't, almost like, she's too green. And I got the job. Boom. So,
God, I love it. I love when people are underestimated. So when you go, at what point did they just tell you right there, listen, we want to talk? No.
So I had to test there too, which I was fine to do because I was employed. I had my Fox contract and I would show up at The View. I did a few months of testing with a bunch of people that were testing. I remember Melissa Joan Hart was testing. It was like a lot of celebrity at the time. Yeah.
What are they asking you? I'm curious. Like when they're sitting there, they're interviewing you. Do they ask you like, so what do you think about this? What do you? Is it that kind of a conversation?
So I did an interview first with Candy Carter, who I really like. She's still at ABC. She's really nice, fun. And she asked me a zillion questions, like, how do you feel about this? And how do you feel about that? And they wanted, the claim was that they wanted diversity of thought on the panel. And they wanted someone who was going to be tough to stand up to the other opinions. So it was a very long interview. And I left and I was like, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know. And then she was like, all right, we're going to put you on. So they put me on. Oh, it was long. It was like, I felt like I was in there for like a couple of hours, honestly.
Okay, got it.
It was long.
And you said it's a panel or it's just Candy?
Well, it was just me and Candy for the interview.
Got it.
And then I think I met with Candy. I think I met with Brian. I met with a few people, and they were like, okay, green light her. Let's put her on and see what she does. So I was this girl who had just a couple of years before that been writing for a blog with like 5.
What was the timeline? But by the time Levin brought you on, you're on Hannity.
Couple of years.
Okay, so you'd put in some work.
But you got to realize, a couple of years is not a long time. People have to. This is very important for people that are listening to this. Look. Whatever situation you're in with your life, like sometimes people, like the part she talked about, she did so much free TV. Mm-hmm. That's the part a lot of people don't want to do. You're going to have to work and get underpaid for a long time until you get your break. And she got a break. It's a beautiful story. That's exactly how capitalism works. That's exactly how your world works. That's how business works. You pay the price and then they find you. And it goes back to Ron Paul's story. If you keep talking about what you believe in, they're eventually going to find you. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.